Yuri started her new job at Daedong Law Firm, the most prestigious law firm in South Korea. She'd applied to the business law department, but her boss had a surprise for her. She was going to be working in the divorce law division. Lawyer Deo Yoonho welcomed her and gave her a little pep talk about joining Yoon Kyung's team. His over-the-top speech left Yuri baffled, as she had no idea who this Yoon Kyung person was. Just like that, like a character straight out of a movie, Yoon Kyung herself walked into the office with a commanding presence. All the staff bowed respectfully as she strode in. Her powerful aura made Yuri feel like she was in the presence of a superstar. Yuri suddenly remembered she had actually met this famous lawyer before. Years ago, Yoon Kyung had visited her college for a lecture, and Yuri, as a student, had even asked her a question. Yoon Kyung had basically told her she was just a textbook parrot who couldn't think for herself. While waiting for her first meeting with Yoon Kyung, Yuri witnessed a heated argument. A man stormed into Yoon Kyung's office and yelled at her, accusing her of taking half his assets away from him during the divorce, all for his wife who just sat at home and ate. Yoon Kyung calmly responded, telling him that the judge made the decision, not her, and if he wasn't happy, he could appeal. She also warned him to watch his tone when talking to her. Seeing this exchange made Yuri even more nervous about starting her new job. Finally, Yuri was face to face with Yoon Kyung. She bluntly told her she wanted to work in the business law department. Yoon Kyung had been briefed on Yuri's desire by her colleagues, who pointed out that 3 new hires had already quit that month, and suggested Yoon Kyung should be a little less strict. Yoon Kyung, ever the strategist, offered Yuri a deal. If Yuri could win 10 cases in a row, she would speak to the firm's director about moving departments. The meeting ended with Yoon Kyung assigning Yuri her first case. Lawyer Yoon Ho pushed a mountain of paperwork onto Yuri's desk. Before she could even catch her breath, Yoon Kyung handed her a schedule and told her to meet the client for a court appearance the very next day. Yuri, armed with her hefty stack of files, was off to see her first client. This person was being sued for adultery and divorced by his wife. Yuri grilled her client, asking if his wife's accusations were true. Had he really been messing around with an employee like she claimed? The guy denied it, saying his wife had serious delusions of grandeur and was always causing a scene at his office, making him look like a fool in front of his staff. His son confirmed his dad's story, claiming his mom would always make him steal his dad's phone, and even made him track his dad's location during dinner. The guy seemed resigned to his fate, saying his wife was his first love. He hoped for the sake of his family that she would drop the lawsuit and they could stay together. Yuri believed the father and son and assured them she would get the case dismissed. But Yoon Kyung, the senior lawyer, practically chewed her out. She said even doctors couldn't guarantee they could save someone's life, and as a lawyer, she should avoid making absolute statements. Yuri stood by her gut, convinced her client was innocent. She was sure she could win the case. Yoon Kyung, with a knowing smirk, hinted that even if a husband was cheating, his wife would always sense it. It's just that some wives couldn't get the proof. On the day of the court hearing, Yoon Kyung reminded Yuri that if anything unexpected happened during the trial, she should tell the judge and they would address it later. In court, Yuri presented evidence that her client had never cheated, arguing his wife's delusions were causing him immense trouble. She asked the judge to dismiss the divorce case. But then, the wife's lawyer pulled a major bombshell, a screenshot of text messages between her client and the female employee. There were some pretty suggestive words in the messages, and it was obvious they were exchanging flirty texts. Yuri was caught off guard. She tried to argue that the wife had bipolar disorder, so the evidence could be fake. Before she could finish, the wife's family jumped in, accusing her of being a liar and saying how much their daughter had suffered in this marriage. Yuri panicked and, remembering Yoon Kyung's instructions, told the judge she would present a response later. The trial ended, and as Yuri walked out, the wife's family attacked her verbally, accusing her of being the other woman. Yoon Kyung, driving Yuri home, doubled down on her initial assessment. She claimed that from the moment she met the guy at the office, she knew he was cheating. She was now even more convinced that he was trying to avoid responsibility for his actions, even lying to his own lawyer. If the wife hadn't shown the text messages, he would have kept denying everything. Yoon Kyung told Yuri to advise her client to admit he was cheating and settle the divorce peacefully. Yuri was furious. She threw the text messages at the client and accused him of lying to her. He claimed they were all misinterpreting things, saying the SS in the messages didn't mean anything dirty. It was short for dinner, and CD didn't mean condoms. It was short for company credit card. Hearing his explanation, Yoon Kyung started laughing. She said the guy was even better at making excuses than a lawyer. Yuri wasn't sure if the judge would buy her client's explanation. Yoon Kyung told her to just go with it. After all, she said, law is a service industry. Our job is to protect our clients' interests. At the second trial, Yuri explained the secret meanings of the text messages to the judge, then played a new recording that proved the wife's delusions. It turns out that after the first trial, while in the bathroom, Yuri overheard the wife talking to her family. The wife was suspicious of Yuri, thinking she was also involved with her husband. Yuri, quick on her feet, had recorded the whole conversation. Next, she presented another piece of evidence, a statement from her client's son. He wrote that he'd been manipulated by his mother since he was a child, being encouraged to spy on his dad, which had put him under a lot of stress. The wife's lawyer countered with a bank statement showing a transfer of money from the husband to his son. He argued the father was bribing his son to lie. Yuri shot back, saying it was just pocket money the father gave his son. Yoon Kyung, watching from the sidelines, was impressed by Yuri's quick thinking. As the final piece of evidence, a CO worker from the husband's company testified that the wife had constantly been causing problems at the office, disrupting their workflow. He also confirmed that the husband and the female employee had no inappropriate relationship, just a normal colleague-to-colleague connection. The second trial was over. All they could do was wait for the judge's decision. As Yuri prepared to leave, she was accosted by the wife's family. She fought back, demanding to be left alone, saying she hadn't done anything wrong. Suddenly, the wife stormed out of the courtroom, yelling at her son. She accused him of writing the statement because his dad had given him 30 million won. She demanded to know why he was treating her so badly. Yuri was about to step in to mediate, but then the husband arrived. Seeing the three of them confronting him, the wife once again accused Yuri of being involved with her husband. She called Yuri a liar machine, saying she just needed a coin to spout out a whole pile of lies and ruin people's lives. Yuri calmly shot back, saying the wife was so bitter and controlling that everyone had distanced themselves from her. The son, fed up, stepped in and shut down the whole drama. He was tired of the 20 years of fighting and hoped things could finally end. The wife, watching her son walk away, collapsed to the ground, completely losing control. She sobbed uncontrollably, telling everyone that this was the 6th time her husband had cheated on her since their son was 5 years old. She said he'd done dirty things with other women in their bedroom, and she had seen it every time. She clung to her husband's leg, begging him to grant her a divorce and set her free. Yuri, seeing the woman so desperate and heartbroken, felt a wave of sympathy wash over her. On the way home, she kept replaying the wife's words in her mind, doubting her own judgment. The verdict came in quickly. Yuri called her client with the good news, but a woman answered the phone. Yuri could clearly hear the woman say honey to her client. Then she handed the phone to him. Yuri knew she had been wrong. She had blindly trusted her client, helped him win, but in doing so, had hurt a vulnerable woman. The verdict was in. The judge dismissed the divorce case and ordered the wife to pay all the legal fees. Yoon Kyung, proud of her rookie lawyer, threw a celebratory party for Yuri, inviting the entire team. But Yuri couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The wife's broken expression kept flashing in her mind, and it felt like a knife twisting in her gut. After the party, Yuri went back to the office, her heart heavy. She started writing a resignation letter, ready to walk away from this whole mess. Then she remembered what lawyer Yoon Ho had said. There was a relaxation room on the 16th floor. Hoping to find some peace, she headed up there. But she had no idea what she was walking into. She stumbled upon a couple in the middle of a passionate embrace, and the guy sneaking around was none other than Yoon Kyung's husband. Yuri gasped, scrambling backward in shock. Just then, she heard someone call out her name from behind. She turned around, her heart leaping into her throat, and saw Yoon Kyung standing there. Yuri was in shock. She had just witnessed a scene straight out of a soap opera. Yoon Kyung's husband was having a full-blown affair with another woman, right there in the relaxation room. And then, there she was, Yoon Kyung herself, standing right behind Yuri. In a moment of panic, Yuri blurted out Yoon Kyung's name. The noise startled the couple in the middle of their tryst. Yuri, still shaken, quickly pulled Yoon Kyung away, pretending to have something important to discuss. Even after they parted ways, Yuri couldn't bring herself to reveal what she had seen. You see, Yuri's own father had cheated on her mother. She still remembered the scene at his funeral, when her mother and his mistress clashed, both women crying hysterically. That experience had left a scar on Yuri, subconsciously making her avoid situations where wives and mistresses confronted each other directly. Yuri confided in Yoon Ho, her fellow lawyer. She wasn't just upset about what she had seen. She was also feeling lost and considering quitting her job. Yoon Ho urged her to stick it out for a while longer. He said he was sure she'd feel differently in a month. He had been there only 3 months before her, and now he was loving his job. Meanwhile, Yoon Kyung was having her own troubles. The night before, she had found Yuri's unfinished resignation letter on her desk and was worried about her suddenly leaving. Lawyer Jung, the firm's senior partner, suggested they give Yuri a raise. Yoon Kyung thought it was a little too obvious and suggested they let things play out naturally. Just then, a couple came in for a divorce consultation. Yoon Kyung brought Yuri along to meet them. The couple turned out to be high school classmates. After getting married and having kids, their families had become close friends, often going on outings together. The wife thanked her husband for being so understanding, saying that most men wouldn't be so cool with their wives hanging out with male friends. The husband expressed his gratitude to his wife for introducing him to such a great family. That weekend, both families decided to go camping together. When the male friend's camper broke down, the husband generously offered to let them all stay in his camper. The wife woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty. When she went to get some water, she noticed her husband wasn't in the camper. She went outside to look for him, and that's when she saw him in a passionate embrace with her classmate's wife. She was heartbroken and devastated by the betrayal. After careful consideration, she decided to tell her classmate about the affair. He was shocked and angry, but he also managed to gather evidence of the affair. His wife also admitted to her infidelity. Yoon Kyung, a lawyer, believed that divorce and compensation for emotional distress were achievable in this situation. At the court hearing, he presented the evidence of the affair to the judge. The husband's lawyer tried to defend him, but then the husband stood up and confessed to the affair. However, he claimed it wasn't just a fling, but a matter of love. Yoon Kyung was surprised at how smoothly the trial was going. But then, the husband requested custody of the children, not his own, but those of his classmate's wife. The judge believed there was potential for reconciliation and asked Yoon Kyung to discuss it with his client, scheduling a mediation session for later. Ri, the wife, was back at work, torn about whether to tell Yoon Kyung about her husband's affair. Seeking advice, she met with Yoon Ho, another colleague. Using a fictional friend scenario, she recounted what she'd witnessed and asked if she should tell the friend. Yoon Ho advised her to tell the friend immediately, so they could face the truth and escape the mess. This gave Ri the answer she needed. As the mediation date approached, she rehearsed what she would say. However, Yoon Kyung noticed her hesitation and thought she wanted to quit her job. He told her to wait until after the mediation to discuss it. Ri reluctantly kept quiet. At the mediation, the husband, confident in his father's political power and wealth, demanded custody of all 3 children from both families. He offered 2 billion won as compensation and insisted that the classmate not get any of the marital assets. The classmate was furious, accusing him of trying to buy his children. Ri was furious too, arguing that forcing the children to live with the cheating couple would be emotional torture for them. Yoon Kyung stepped in, suggesting they needed to discuss things further and would provide an answer at the next mediation session. Ri criticized Yoon Kyung's handling of the situation, believing he should have outright rejected the husband's demands. Yoon Kyung reminded her they were lawyers and had to respect their client's wishes. The wife had remained silent throughout the mediation, offering no opinion. Ri felt it was impossible for the wife to sell her children for money. Yoon Kyung chuckled, calling her naive and pointing out that relinquishing custody didn't mean abandoning her children. Back at the office, Ri complained to Yoon Ho about Yoon Kyung's cold-heartedness. Yoon Ho took her to meet Lawyer Jung, asking him what he'd do if a friend's husband was having an affair. Lawyer Jung responded that he'd pretend not to know, avoiding getting involved in other people's business. He advised waiting before taking action. Ri was still unsure whether to tell Yoon Kyung. Yoon Kyung directly asked the couple if they wanted custody of the children. The husband insisted on fighting for it. Ri believed they needed to leave a permanent record of the affair in the couple's history. Yoon Kyung reminded the classmate that he'd only get 20 million won if he accepted emotional distress compensation. If he agreed to a settlement, he'd receive 100 million won, and there was a good chance he'd get custody of his child. He urged the classmate to be realistic. The classmate refused to give in. The wife, who had been silent until then, spoke up and agreed to accept the 2 billion won. She explained that her children had always worn designer clothes and attended international schools, expenses she couldn't afford. Her parents only owned a small restaurant, and she wouldn't have anyone to help her care for the kids. Taking custody would prevent her from even going to work. Ri was appalled by this decision, arguing that the children might later believe their father was responsible for them while their mother had abandoned them. Yoon Kyung reprimanded Ri for criticizing their client and demanded an apology. Reluctantly, she apologized, but the wife was already tearing up. Yoon Kyung advised them not to blame themselves, as they were making the best choices they could at that moment. He would present their case according to their wishes. At the final mediation session, both parties signed the agreement, relinquishing custody and accepting the compensation. Ri was confused about the classmate's change of heart. Yoon Kyung explained that the investigator had spoken to the classmate's son, who clearly expressed his desire to live with his mother. Despite this, Ri remained unconvinced. Drawing upon his experience, Yoon Kyung explained that the husband's determination to gain custody was simply a way to justify his affair. However, once he achieved his goal, his enthusiasm would wane. Moreover, he was busy with work and wouldn't have time to care for the children. Eventually, he would want them to live with their mother. This way, the wife would receive money and be able to see her children regularly. It was a perfect outcome for the case. After explaining everything, Yoon Kyung took Ri out to buy a luxury handbag with his generous legal fees. While Ri was browsing for a bag, Yoon Kyung pulled out a watch she had ordered. It was almost their anniversary, a time that used to be filled with sweetness, but now only brought her heartache. The next day at work, Ri noticed that Yoon Kyung's assistant was wearing the same dress as the woman who'd been having an affair with her husband. To confirm her suspicions, she rushed to the security camera footage on the 16th floor. There, she saw the assistant entering the psychology counseling room. Realizing that the woman who'd been by Yoon Kyung's side every day was the one having an affair with her husband, Ri was completely shocked. She recalled an incident from their past. They were at the supermarket as a family when they ran into her father's subordinate. As they passed each other, the woman discreetly pulled on her father's shirt, acting very familiar. Her mother had been completely oblivious at the time. Now, history was repeating itself, and she didn't want Yoon Kyung to remain in the dark. With a surge of courage, Ri told Yoon Kyung about her husband's affair. But to her surprise, Yoon Kyung remained incredibly calm. She said, "I know. It's Choi Sa-ra." Yoon Kyung threw a party to celebrate her husband Ji Sang's promotion to legal counsel at a hospital. At the party, Sa-ra, Yoon Kyung's assistant, offered to buy more beer for Ji-sang, claiming he couldn't carry it all. Yoon Kyung felt something was off, but didn't think too much of it. The next day, while driving to work with her husband, Yoon Kyung overheard a voicemail from a woman asking about Ji-sang's whereabouts. Ji-sang reacted harshly and lied, saying it was from Director Choi. Yoon Kyung was suspicious until she got to the hospital and discovered there was no Director Choi. Suspecting her husband of infidelity, Yoon Kyung went to his office to get her daughter's phone. To her shock, she found a wedding photo of Ji-sang and Sarah. Trying to stay composed, Yoon Kyung silently left. Ji-sang called, asking if she was at his office. Yoon Kyung lied, saying she wasn't, and angrily smashed her phone after hanging up. For the first time in her life, a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases was facing her own marital tragedy. Yoon Kyung confided in Yoo-ri, revealing that she knew about her husband's affair. Yoo-ri was furious on her behalf and urged her to divorce, split the assets, and move on from the betrayal. However, Yoon Kyung said she wasn't ready to divorce. She explained that firing both her husband and her assistant at the same time would disrupt her life and work. Yoo-ri couldn't comprehend Yoon Kyung's reasoning. That day was Yoon Kyung and Ji-sang's wedding anniversary, but he was getting cozy with Sarah. Before going home, Ji-sang promised Ara that he would talk to Yoon Kyung about divorce. Back at home, Ji-sang coldly asked Yoon Kyung how long she intended to keep things like this. He had made his intentions clear, but she still hadn't given him an answer. Yoon Kyung didn't want to divorce. She hoped things could be salvaged. Ji-sang criticized Yoon Kyung for focusing only on work and neglecting their family. To him, she was just the mother of his daughter. Yoon Kyung remained silent. Though deeply hurt, she couldn't bring herself to agree to a divorce for the sake of her daughter having a complete family. Meanwhile, at the law firm, Yoo-ri was meeting with a client, Miss Park, a woman who wanted a divorce. She had been coming in for consultations for 4 times now, the last allowed by the firm's policy. Miss Park's daughter expressed her frustration with her alcoholic father and urged her mother to divorce. However, Miss Park hesitated, believing that her husband treated her well when he wasn't drunk. She also worried that he couldn't cook and wouldn't be able to live without her. Yoo-ri couldn't understand why Miss Park would endure such a marriage. She reminded her that this was the final opportunity, and if she didn't make a decision, she would continue to suffer with her alcoholic husband. Finally, persuaded by Yoo-ri and her daughter, Miss Park agreed to sign the divorce papers. Yoon Kyung believed Miss Park would regret it. Yoo-ri confided in Yoon-ho, sharing her desire to become a skilled lawyer who helped unfortunate women escape unhappy marriages. But in reality, those women didn't want to divorce. She accidentally revealed her husband's affair to Yoon-ho, who promised to keep it a secret. But he wasn't the only one who knew. At Ji-sang's celebration party, Lawyer Jung witnessed Ji-sang and Sarah holding hands. Looking very affectionate, he invited Yoon Kyung for drinks and discreetly asked why she wasn't divorcing. Yoon Kyung didn't want to discuss it. Lawyer Jung reassured her that he would always be there for her. Just as Yoon Kyung predicted, Miss Park requested to withdraw her divorce petition because her husband promised to treat her well if she went back home. Yoo-ri was furious and told Miss Park to block her husband's number and give him her number instead. Immediately, she received a call from Miss Park's husband. The drunken man yelled at Yoo-ri for ruining his family and threatened to take revenge if she didn't let his wife go back home. Yoo-ri angrily hung up. Adding to her frustration, Yoo-ri ran into Sarah in the building where she lived. Sarah turned out to be her neighbor, and her mother was close friends with her. Her mother even knew that Yoo-ri was living with her boyfriend. Realizing that the boyfriend her mother mentioned was Yoon Kyung's husband, Yoo-ri was furious. Yoo-ri was horrified. She, an outsider, couldn't bear it. Yet Yoon Kyung was determined to stay in the marriage. The next day, Yoo-ri received news that Miss Park's husband had been hospitalized. As soon as she arrived at the hospital, she was berated by Miss Park, who blamed her for her husband's condition, claiming Yoo-ri had instigated the divorce. Yoo-ri was exhausted and felt lost for the first time. She asked Yoon Kyung for advice, and Yoon Kyung suggested she observe calmly, explaining that the man was clearly playing the victim. Yoo-ri visited Miss Park at the hospital again, and saw her caring for her husband who was yelling at her. When the man was about to hit Miss Park, Yoo-ri intervened. Miss Park stubbornly refused to go through with the divorce, claiming she was unlucky and couldn't afford to get divorced. Just as Yoo-ri was at a loss for words, Yoon Kyung appeared. She advised Miss Park not to delude herself into believing her husband would change, and warned her it could be even worse. She told Miss Park that she was no longer limited to the number of consultations, and hoped she would think carefully before returning. Yoo-ri was confused by Yoon Kyung's change in attitude. It seemed she was talking about Miss Park, but also about herself. Sometimes people suddenly woke up and accepted the truth. Yoo-ri agreed with Yoon Kyung's point of view, but she still decided to quit because she didn't see a future for her ideals and passion to help others. Before leaving, Yoo-ri told Yoon Kyung about her husband and Sarah living together and gave her the address. Yoon Kyung went to the address and witnessed her husband and Sarah embracing in the elevator and laughing happily at the supermarket. She remembered the happy moments her family of 3 had shared together. Now, her husband was showering another woman with his love and attention. The pain of betrayal, the harsh reality, and the shattered family made her cry uncontrollably in her car. Recovering her composure, Yoon Kyung unexpectedly went to see Yoo-ri. Yoo-ri was packing her things to leave, but Yoon Kyung stopped her. She said she hadn't agreed to let Yoo-ri quit and handed her a file of divorce documents. Lawyer Han. My case, you're taking it on. The woman woke up from her drunken stupor, finding herself in a motel room. Her male colleague was sleeping naked beside her. Realizing something had happened while they were intoxicated, she quickly gathered her things and left. Yoon Kyung had been trying to hold on to her marriage, but after witnessing Ji Sang and Se Ra's intimacy, she was completely broken. She returned to the firm and begged Yoo-ri to help her with the divorce proceedings. Seeing the evidence in the divorce papers, Yoo-ri realized Yoon Kyung had prepared everything beforehand. Yoon Kyung explained she had been gathering evidence to prevent a divorce. According to the law, the guilty party in a marriage couldn't file for divorce. However, now she wanted Yoo-ri to help her stage the most perfect divorce ever. Yoon Kyung acted swiftly. The next day, Se Ra received a lawsuit. The lawsuit clearly stated that Yoon Kyung was suing her for ruining her family's happiness. Se Ra was completely shocked and terrified. She had been testing the waters, hoping Yoon Kyung and Ji Sang would divorce. But Yoon Kyung had dealt her a fatal blow before she could react. Yoon Kyung gave her no chance, calling her into the office and ripping off the mask, asking her what her next plan was. Se Ra said she would leave the company soon and asked Yoon Kyung when she had found out. Yoon Kyung gave a wry smile, saying it was a classic line every mistress used. Se Ra felt humiliated, but she didn't admit to being a mistress, saying that Yoon Kyung and Ji Sang were practically strangers now. After sending Se Ra away, the strong facade on Yoon Kyung's face crumbled. She then received a call from her husband. It turned out that Ji Sang had also received the lawsuit. He suspected that Yoon Kyung had installed security cameras in his office to get evidence. He even mocked her for using such tactics, claiming it proved his decision to leave her was wise. Yoon Kyung bit her lip to stop herself from crying and told her husband not to call her again. If he needed anything, he should contact her lawyer. Ji Sang suspected that Yoon Kyung was getting help from lawyer Jung and sarcastically accused them of having an affair. Yoon Kyung was devastated, not only betrayed but also falsely accused. After hanging up the phone, she burst into tears. To deal with Yoon Kyung, Ji Sang and Se Ra sought help from a seasoned lawyer, Lawyer Fat. Seeing the clear evidence of their affair, Lawyer Fat believed the situation was very unfavorable for them. Ji Sang claimed that he had been taking care of their child all these years, which could help him turn the tables in the divorce case. Hearing this, Lawyer Fat sneered at Yoon Kyung, criticizing her like other women who become arrogant once they earn some money. Seeing this, Ji Sang made his demand. He wanted custody of the child. Se Ra's face changed slightly. She wanted Ji Sang to think carefully. She clearly didn't want custody. Lawyer Fat suggested they negotiate a settlement with Yoon Kyung first. It was better to silently get what they wanted than to make a fuss in court. Meanwhile, Yoon Kyung and Yoo-ri were handling a case for the owner of a company about to go public. Mr. Kim and his wife had been separated for years. He had been paying his wife a large sum of money every month, but she had been having an affair and filed for divorce. Recently, Mr. Kim's company was about to go public, and his wife was using all kinds of excuses to prove they were still married, aiming to get a share of the company. After investigating the situation, Yoon Kyung pointed out in the first hearing that Mr. Kim and his wife had been separated and hadn't contacted each other for almost 5 years. Mr. Kim's wife refuted Yoon Kyung's statement, insisting she still loved Mr. Kim. She presented evidence of his money transfers to her, as well as his travel records, showing that he visited her and their children every year. Yoon Kyung was completely surprised and said she would provide an answer in the next hearing. After the hearing, Yoon Kyung asked Mr. Kim what had happened. He replied that his wife had been demanding alimony, threatening that she would tell the children if he didn't give it to her and take her anger out on them. He didn't want his children to live in misery, so he had to give in. Yoon Kyung reminded him that he was only making his wife think those things were her right. From now on, he had to change his attitude and make her accept the fact that he was no longer the pillar of the family. Yoon Kyung told Yoo-ri to pay attention to Mr. Kim's youngest daughter. It was 3 weeks until she turned 18. Yoon Kyung suggested that the 2 grown daughters write a statement, and she would ask for a 3-week postponement of the trial. By then, the statement would expose the true nature of her husband and Se Ra. As they were leaving, Yoon Kyung had something else to deal with, but it was time to pick up her daughter from her tutoring session. Knowing Yoo-ri had bought a car, she assigned her the task of picking up her daughter. Reluctantly, Yoo-ri had to comply and drive to pick up Yoon Kyung's daughter. On the way, Yoo-ri carefully chose her words, afraid of accidentally revealing Yoon Kyung's marital problems. However, her daughter had already noticed the problems between her parents and asked Yoo-ri when her parents were getting divorced. Yoo-ri felt her daughter's way of speaking was very similar to Yoon Kyung's, so she called her Little Yoon Kyung. The girl was unhappy, saying she looked more like her father and should be called Little Ji Sang. After helping Yoon Kyung with her work, Yoo-ri went to a bar to complain to Yoon Ho that Yoon Kyung was treating her like a maid. They talked and drank. Unexpectedly, after getting drunk, they stumbled into a motel and slept in the same bed. Yoo-ri woke up, realizing what had happened the night before, and quickly left while Yoon Ho was still asleep. As soon as she got to the office, she found the head of the law firm angrily looking for Yoon Kyung. It turned out that the news of Yoon Kyung's divorce was spreading like wildfire. Such a famous lawyer couldn't even handle her own marriage well. The head of the firm believed this was affecting the company's image and wanted Yoon Kyung to settle it privately. Yoon Kyung refused to reconcile, insisting on taking it to court. Seeing the head of the firm's anger, lawyer Jung quickly intervened, urging him not to scold Yoon Kyung in front of everyone, as it would further damage the firm's image. Ji-sang took the initiative to reconcile with Yoon Kyung. Seeing that she wasn't moved, he brought up their children to bind her. Yoon Kyung was enraged by his use of their daughter as leverage and warned him never to mention her daughter again in her presence. She would absolutely not reconcile. Soon, the second hearing of Mr. Kim's case took place. Yuri had submitted the two daughters' statements as evidence. The youngest daughter wrote in her statement that her parents loved them in their own way, but 5 years ago, they had clearly stated that they would only be parents from then on, no longer husband and wife. Mr. Kim's wife's lies were exposed. Ultimately, Mr. Kim won the case. Yoon Kyung took Yuri out to celebrate. Yuri told Yoon Kyung that her daughter knew about their divorce. At that time, she had avoided the topic. Yoon Kyung needed to talk to her daughter herself. Their divorce was now public knowledge, and she needed to explain it to her daughter quickly. Yuri asked if Ji-sang and Asara wanted to reconcile, and if Yoon Kyung would agree. Yoon Kyung firmly replied, "Yes, I want revenge. I will definitely make him leave with nothing." The next day, Yuri received a document accusing Yoon Kyung of having an affair. She was shocked and ran to Yoon Kyung to verify it. However, she saw lawyer Jung standing close to Yoon Kyung, seemingly hugging each other. Why did she keep encountering these kinds of situations? Yuri thought to herself. The malicious mistress had been working under her boss for years, but secretly stole her boss's husband. When she saw her boss filing for divorce, she started spreading rumors and falsely accused her boss of having an affair with a colleague. Yoon Kyung and her husband Ji-sang became the focus of public attention because their affair was exposed. To force Yoon Kyung to reconcile, Sara falsely accused her of having an affair with lawyer Jung in front of Ji-sang. Ji-sang knew that Yoon Kyung dedicated herself to her work, not even having time to eat, let alone an affair. But Sara insisted on involving Yoon Kyung, adding fuel to the fire, saying that lawyer Jung liked her and maybe they had already been involved. If so, they couldn't be the only bad guys, and Yoon Kyung should taste the feeling of being surrounded by public scrutiny. Influenced by Se-ra, Ji-sang immediately revealed to the reporters that Yoon Kyung and lawyer Jung were work spouses. The news spread like wildfire, and false rumors about Yoon Kyung circulated rapidly. Yoon Kyung called lawyer Jung to the office, apologetically explaining that she had dragged him into this mess. Lawyer Jung was not angry at all for being caught in this whirlwind. Instead, he encouraged her to reach out to him whenever she needed anything. Yoon Kyung declined his offer, put down her glass of water, and was about to continue working. However, the glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. They both quickly cleaned up the broken pieces, and Yoon Kyung accidentally cut her finger. Lawyer Jung anxiously checked her wound. This scene was witnessed by Yuri, who had just arrived. Yuri hadn't seen the online rumors yet, but she received a counterclaim from Yoon Kyung's husband and Sara. Sara wanted to take advantage of the unfavorable public opinion towards Yoon Kyung and file a counterclaim, proving to the public that it wasn't just her and Yoon Kyung's husband who were having affairs, but that both sides had issues. Therefore, she ordered her lawyer to immediately send the counterclaim to Yuri, Yoon Kyung's lawyer. The lawyer was not happy with Se-ra's arrogant attitude and thought to himself, "Don't think working under Yoon Kyung makes you as powerful as she is." But because of his professional obligation to his client, he still sent the counterclaim to Yuri. Yuri saw Yoon Kyung and lawyer Jung standing close together, coupled with the rumors she had read online. She wrongly assumed it was true and felt a surge of anger, immediately barging into the office. Seeing Yuri's suspicious gaze, Yoon Kyung raised her injured finger, hoping she wouldn't misunderstand. Yuri handed the counterclaim to Yoon Kyung. After lawyer Jung left, as Yoon Kyung's defense lawyer, she demanded the truth, asking if she was having an affair with lawyer Jung. Yoon Kyung was taken aback that the junior lawyer was trying to intimidate her. She scolded Yuri for being flustered after being hit with a counterclaim, and told her to quickly figure out how to deal with the counterclaim in public opinion. Yuri returned to her office, and lawyer Jung came to see her. He was a key witness in the case, so Yuri felt a bit awkward, but still tried to inquire, wanting to understand the relationship between lawyer Jung and Yoon Kyung. Lawyer Jung said he was also a victim, and then recounted what he knew about Yoon Kyung over the years. They had both joined the law firm that year. As a female lawyer, Yoon Kyung was often doubted by clients due to society's inherent prejudice of women are inferior to men. But Yoon Kyung proved herself with her abilities. She actively defended her clients in court, using her professional knowledge and decisive work style to help them win case after case. Lawyer Jung was a witness to Yoon Kyung's efforts and successes. Seeing that she was so busy that she didn't even have time to eat or rest, he brought her a cup of coffee and insisted she take a break. But he didn't expect that one day, Yoon Kyung would suddenly give him a wedding invitation. Lawyer Jung was surprised and asked when she started dating. Yoon Kyung replied that it was an arranged marriage. The other person was a doctor who could cook, a suitable marriage partner. Lawyer Jung reminded her that it was best to get to know each other well before making a decision. Yoon Kyung treated marriage like she treated her work, not wanting to waste time, just wanting to quickly resolve it. After telling Yoo Ri everything, Lawyer Jung said that Yoon Kyung wasn't good at judging people. Her husband's actions were clearly meant to force her to reconcile. He hoped Yoo Ri could trust Yoon Kyung and figure out a way to fight back. From Lawyer Jung's attitude, Yoo Ri realized he had always secretly loved Yoon Kyung. Clearly a victim, he didn't harbor any resentment or complaint. On the contrary, he was concerned for Yoon Kyung from beginning to end. Such a kind heart could only be explained by love. Seeing that Lawyer Jung remained silent, Yoo Ri reminded him to hide his feelings. In this situation, continuing to express his feelings for Yoon Kyung would only make things worse. After the conversation, Yoo Ri overheard some female colleagues discussing Lawyer Jung's secret admiration for Yoon Kyung. The women were laughing and gossiping. If they were in her shoes, they would have already married a good man like Lawyer Jung. The gossip outside and the rumors in the company gave Yoo Ri a splitting headache. At this moment, Sa-ra took the initiative to approach Yoo Ri, hoping she could persuade Yoon Kyung to reconcile. Yoo Ri knew she wanted to quickly escape the public scrutiny and spoke sharply, not holding back at all. But when she returned to the office, she still followed Sa-ra's suggestion and tried to gauge Yoon Kyung's opinion on reconciliation. After all, Yoon Kyung was a public figure, and she worried that the scandal would continue to affect her. However, Yoon Kyung firmly refused to reconcile. At the same time, Lawyer Jung's father came to see him. Although he was his father, their relationship seemed very cold. He had also realized his son's feelings for Yoon Kyung and warned him. For the company, Yoon Kyung is a rare talent, but for a man, she's a terrible woman. Her husband's affair isn't surprising. Lawyer Jung refuted his father, saying he had no right to judge his feelings and shouldn't pretend to care about him. Lawyer Jung didn't want to argue anymore, so they had a fight and went their separate ways. The next day, Yoon Kyung sent Yoo Ri to a remote mountainous area to collect a settlement. Yoon Ho went with her. Since their accidental night together, Yoo Ri had been trying to avoid Yoon Ho. They were both awkward and could only make small talk to relieve their embarrassment. Initially, they planned to get things done and return immediately, but the client lived deep in the forest, forcing them to climb mountains and cross streams. On the way, Yoo Ri almost fell, but Yoon Ho caught her in time. They finally found the client, only to discover that the couple they had helped divorce had reunited and remarried. The man claimed that since they had already divorced and remarried, it was as if they had never divorced, and refused to pay the lawyer fees. Yoo Ri caught an important piece of information from their conversation. They had been in love for 20 years, had accumulated a lot of debt, divorced and then remarried, proving that they had initially faked the divorce. Exposed, the couple had to admit that they had initially faked the divorce to reduce their debt burden. Now that the secret was revealed, they agreed to take responsibility, seeing that they took full responsibility for their actions and didn't want to implicate anyone else. Yoo Ri felt a glimmer of hope. Yoo Ri was deeply moved and disgusted with Yoon Ho, deciding to give up on collecting the lawyer fees. Because out of all the divorce cases she had handled, this was the first time she had encountered someone who got divorced to protect their love. Yoon Ho had always admired Yoo Ri's kindness and sincerity, and this admiration had gradually turned into love during their interactions. On their way back, he confessed his feelings to Yoo Ri, hoping they could try dating. But since witnessing her father's infidelity and the breakup of her family, Yoo Ri had decided not to get married. She declined Yoon Ho's offer, saying she wanted to focus on work and solidify her position at the law firm. Yoon Ho didn't push her further and agreed to be her friend. Upon returning to the law firm, Yoo Ri had an idea based on the fake divorce case of the couple. If Sa-ra had falsely accused Yoon Kyung, they would fight back. They would use the shocking term shared husband to pique public curiosity. Yoo Ri contacted the reporter who had published the news about Yoon Kyung having a work spouse and asked him to expose the fact that Yoon Kyung's husband was living with Sa-ra before their divorce. This was clearly a violation of the law, involving a shared husband. As soon as the news was published, public opinion exploded. Yoon Kyung and Yoo Ri attended the first hearing and were surrounded by reporters as soon as they got out of the car. Yoon Kyung calmly faced the cameras and stated, "I hope my case can give positive energy to those who are suffering from injustice in their marriages." Yoo Ri, as the defense lawyer explained, the so-called shared husband refers to cohabiting with another person while still being bound by marriage, having two families. Their words ignited public outrage. The current situation was favorable for them, but Yoon Kyung didn't expect Sa-ra to use their daughter against her.